Beginning current Daf, Mesech Yevamos Daf Yud Aleph. We begin 13 lines down at the top of the Amud, where the Gemara continues in a related discussion from the Machlekes Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg that we had from the previous Daf, whether the Isser Eishes Ach really has a lot of lumdis over here. We're just only touching the surface here. Whether the Isser Eishes Ach remains regarding the other Achen and the other Tsaras, which was regarding this question about how to qualify after Chalitza is done and no one built the house of his brother. What is the status of the other tsaras and the other brothers? Some of this is going to discuss in today's daf. Again, like we said, is going to be a continuation of this machlek Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg regarding the Isser Eishes Ach as it applies to the other brothers and to the tsaras. The concept of bayis echad u'bayna be'in bayna beis batim, that a person could only build one house and cannot build two houses, meaning to say you can't do yibum to more than one of the co-wives. The concept of if a woman, if her husband goes overseas and she makes a mistake thinking that he died and she marries someone else, what's going to be her halachic status? Is the isser of if someone divorces his wife and she got married to someone else and then he remarried, so that is prohibited. Now in the previous daf we had mentioned that someone does chalitza to his yevama, and then he went and remarried her, umeis, and then he died. So he said in the Reisha, that you need to have chalitza from the brothers. Now apparently that sounded like Rabbi Yechanan, because she's chiv alav. But at the same time, we said if one of the brothers went and he did kiddushin, and not the chalitz, we said ein lo alav klum. There's nothing here. Apparently because she's chiv increases. We said those were contradictory. So we said that two approaches how to be able to resolve that question based on if you hold a group Shimon or Derabanan regarding Eishes Achim Shelo Hoye Ba'ilamai, regarding if you're going to say that the original Zika, did that affect that brother who wasn't there at that time? If you hold a group Shimon, if this brother is born afterwards, he wasn't affected by that. So he doesn't have that isser of that first zika, of that first chalutza to make it, oh, you have this problem. So even if I'm going to hold like Rish Lakish that it's a punishment of kares, it's not going to be an erva. And if you actually have to do chalitza. But paradoxically, according to Rabbi Yechanan, the whole there's a chiv lav, and therefore that's why the brothers have to do chalitza, which was the reisha. So then why do we say in love klum? Is because they're like the rabbanon. And it's a problem because it does affect her negatively. It's actually Eish Achav Shlei Bailamai, because you were born only after the brother did Chalitza and then remarried her. And that's the reason why it's problematic. Not even because of Chalutza, because of Eish Achav Shlei Bailamai. That was the two approaches we had that explained either Kon Rabbi Yechon or Shlakish. Now we continue 13 lines down at the top of the Amud. Itmar we learned related to this Machlekes Rabbi Yechon and Shlakish, which actually is going to plug in directly into this Machlekes. Habal Yevama. If someone cohabits with his Yevama, meaning he consummates the relationship, he does yibum. And then one of the brothers goes and he's like, yeah, you think you're going to do yibum? I'm going to do yibum. Say, hello, I already did yibum. Who asked you? You're a nice vav. He goes and he says, I'm going to do yibum. And he takes one of the other co-wives. Now, one says that he's going to get a punishment of kares. One says he's only violating a positive commandment. What's that I'll say? So Rashi says because the terminology of building base achiv, which tells us that he can only build one house, but not two houses, is a lava bo machlal laseh. It's a negative prohibition which is derived from the Torah is telling you that he should build bayis achiv, which tells us that only one bayis, it says in the singular, not two. But that's an inferential lav, which is called, it's qualified as a positive commandment. It's a negative prohibition that's derived from aseh, which qualified as aseh. So the Gemara explains this machlekes Rav Acher and Ravina is really the same machlekes Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yechanan. Mandam Bakar is the one that says that you're going to get kares is Rish Lakish, as we just finished explaining from the previous daf, that Rish Lakish says that brother is not doing the shlichus of the brothers, so therefore he has an aseh of not marrying another tzara. The brothers, again, we said it in a different context. We said it regarding of shula yivne. There's two things, there's two ideas. When the text about beis achiv, there's one about says ashul yivne is beis achiv, which it says in the singular, which tells you only build one house, not marry two of the co-wives. Additionally, it says ashul yivne in the plural, Kivin Shabana, Shuvla Yivna. That's one's a negative prohibition of not taking back the woman that you did chalitza to. And there's a different halacha about that you can't marry two of the co-wives. That's a positive commandment because it's saying that what you should do, the inferential what you shouldn't do. Now, just like we said for Rish Lakish, that remarrying the chalutza for him, for the chayletz, is only negative prohibition, but for the other brothers, they remain with the original chiv karis of Eishazach. So too over here, regarding marrying a tzara, you already married the Yevama. When you want to marry the tzara, for the one who did the yibam, for him, interestingly, the tzara is only a positive commandment. Because it says, don't only buy a sechet, beis batim. That's a derivative of a positive commandment. But for the brothers, they remain with their Isser Eishazach. They never had any thing that took away the Isser Eishazach. So for them, it's going to be a kares if one of the other brothers marries the tzara. Mandam Masid, the one that said it's only being a positive commandment, is Rabbi Yechanan, which, again, is just like we said. He said that the brother who did the Yibum or the Chalitza is doing the agency of the brothers. He's just a shliach. So just like for him, the tzara becomes naseh, for the brothers, it also becomes naseh, just like he said regarding the marrying chalutza of that negative prohibition that applies to all the brothers and all the tzaras. So to read that this positive commandment, I'm not marrying more than one, applies to all the brothers and not just to this one brother. So therefore, it's interesting that this machlekes of Rav Chabina is really the same machlekes Yevamos Daf. Now the Gemara continues regarding a related discussion of our Mishnah, which really the theme of our Mishnah was that in Erva, there's 15 women we spoke about that Arayas, that exempts their tzara from Chalitza and Mimim. So the Gemara, and we actually already mentioned this already in Daf, already in the beginning of the parak, the beginning of the Masechta, when we spoke about why I say 15 and it says these, and it sounds like we're excluding certain cases. We had mentioned these cases regarding what are possible arayas that are we not mentioning in the Mishnah. I'm going to read them out. It says, Tzara Saita, the co-wife of a Saita, is Asura, is forbidden. What does that mean? So Rashi explains the case. He says, let's say a man was married to two wives. One of his wives was Mazana, had a relationship with another man. And they're witnesses. Fine. But he died without any children. So her and her co-wife are exempt even from chalitza. What's the reason? Because, says Rav, Tumak Sibba. The pasuk in Bamidbar Hay says, V'nistira v'hi nitma. She was secluded with another man, and she became tamei, which is the same terminology, karayis. The pasuk in Vayikra Yitzchak says, when it talks about all the arayis, it says, Al tetama b'chaleh, don't become defiled with all these women. Oh, so the pasuk calls her tamei, like all the other arayis, so she's like an erva. And just like an erva is going to be pointed to saying, this saita, this woman who had an adulterous relationship, is going to be an erva to the brother-in-law. She's going to exempt her co-wives. That's what Rav says.
She's going to drink the Meisaita, she'll either survive.
But Meisaita is only by his kiss in the situation of Suffolk. And the question is, what are we talking about? We're going to see in the Gemara what type of Saita are we talking about. But Pasha says she was Mizana.
She's not a Saita.
Yeah, so she was Mizana and she's an erva. And whatever is going to be with her death is one thing, but regarding the halacha of Yibam Chalitza, we're going to say she's an erva and she's going to exempt her tzar. But Masr Rav Chizah asked when Mishnah later on Daf Pei Zayin Omid Beis. The Mishnah there is talking about a woman that her husband went overseas. And they came and told her, look, I'm sorry to inform you, but your husband passed away. Now, obviously in those days they didn't have what we have in today's times, and she heard someone said that her husband died, so she gets remarried. Then, voila, a few years later, her husband comes back. He's still alive. Halacha is teitzim mizeh. She has to leave the first marriage, because she was mezana, and she has to leave the second relationship, because she was still married. Now, what happens if both those husbands die? Her first husband and the new husband that she had. So halacha is that the brothers of either one of those husbands, they do chalitza, but they don't do yibum. That's what the Tanna Kama says. Reb Shimon, he says, no. It says, biyasa e chalitzasa, me'achiv shal rishon. Either yibum or chalitza from the brothers of the first one, meaning from original husband, is perteres tzadasa, is going to exempt the co-wife. Meaning, like Rashi explains, because this woman is just like all other women for the laws of to the yavam from her first husband. Why? Because the rabbis did not penalize her from the Yavam. Because most definitely she is permitted to the Yavam, because she was what's called an Anusa. It was beyond her control. She thought her husband was dead. So obviously, that if she had a relationship during marriage with another man, which is really essentially what happened over here in this case, she was still married, she was having a relationship with the second man, that Sarah is permitted to do Yibum, because even the Rabbanan who disagree with Rabbi Shimon in that Mishnah Daf Zayin, that's only with the woman herself, where they hold that she has to have chalitza. But regarding the tzara, they would agree that she would not exempt the tzara as like a tzara serva. So therefore, you're telling me that this woman who had a relationship with another man makes her tzara exempt. No one's going to say that. Everyone's going to hold that either even she could do yibum, or even if she can't do yibum like the Rabbanan Reb Shimon, but for sure her tzara could do yibum. So why are you telling me that tzara saita would be asura? So Amalach Rav would tell you, I mean, like Taisa points out, tzara saita asura is not precisely asura, because it's not just like asura usually connotes from yibum. It's even from chalitza that she's patur. So, but we see that's not true. So Amalach Rav would tell you, no, I was talking about a case of a biblical saita, meaning she was mazan, she had an actual adulterous affair, and the Torah says that she's forbidden, like an erva, because she's called asher hutama, like we said, that v'nistra v'nitma, that she's considered as tame, which is like an erva to make her tzara forbidden. You're asking from the Mishnah Daf Zayin, which is a rabbinic saita, as Rashi explains. Biblically, a woman who her husband went overseas and she got a report that he's dead, biblically she's permitted to her first husband, because she got married with the ruling of the court with one witness, and she's an anusa. And the Torah says that a woman that was anusa, if a woman had a relation with another man, coerced, which is called anusa. Now usually we think of that as rape. There's other cases of anusa, because the pasuk tells you, v'hilainus pasa, that if she wasn't forced, then she's forbidden to her husband. The inference is, if she was forced, she's permitted. Now, forced could either be physically forced, or psychologically, philosophically forced, or however you say that. And she was forced, she was anusa, she thought her husband was dead. Now, the Rabbanan were geyser that she's going to be forbidden to her first husband, just to make sure that she'll be careful and to check and realize the ultimatum here. She won't get married until she really, really knows and verifies, because by the way, your husband's alive, you're done. You can't go back to him. So that's only rabbinic. So that's Saita de Rabbanan. She's not a real Saita. This adulterous relationship she had is not a biblical adulterous relationship. It's anusa biblically. It's rabbinically like a Saita, not biblically. So of course she's not going to be like an erva to exempt her tzara. I'm talking about a Saita de Raisa. A woman consensually went and had another relationship with another man. So that's going to be tzara seva. What are you asking me from the Mishnah Pezai? Where it's not talking about Saita de Raisa. So the Gemara says this is such a good answer. With the karila makarila. The one who asked it, what was he asking? Rav was only talking about Saita Daraisa, which says over there, the Nistra V'hinitma, that she became tummy. What's he asking from the case of a rabbinic site? Says Gemara Ksav, the one who asked the question thought, as the well-known Talmudic dictum called the Talking Rabban, or whatever the Rabban instituted, Kin Daraisa Talking. They instituted like the biblical directives. Now, if Saita Daraisa, it's true like Rav, that her and her tzar would be forbidden, then the rabbis also, when they made their rabbinic saita, which is the case of a woman who she heard a report that her husband died overseas and she got remarried, also the Rabbanan should have said that at least the tsar should be forbidden of doing yibum and at least require chalitza, but we see that no, Rabbi Shimon holds that you could do even yibum. So that was the Gemara's questioner saying that, wait a second, but how could you say that if called the talking the Rabban Ken Daraisa talking, then it should be at least forbidden to do a yibum to the tsar? And that's what Rav would say, no, that's not difficult, but that at least was what the questioner held. And Masar Rav Ashi Gemara continues to ask on Rav's teaching regarding the exemption of its Tzara Saita from a Mishnah Masechta Saita. The Mishnah there is talking about that if someone did kinui for his wife, kinui is a warning, and he tells her, look, you're getting a little too friendly with that other man, I don't want you to seclude with that man. What happens if Nichnasai Moila Seisa? So what happens if his wife goes and she secludes herself with that man? And they stayed the amount of time that something inappropriate could have happened. So that's through the Besa. She's forbidden to her husband because maybe she was mazanim, because there's what's called reglam, but there's indicating characteristics because he warned her and she's secluded. So if she's a kehenis, then actually she's even basur lechel b'truma. She's even forbidden to eat truma. As the Gemara learns out in the Chav Chesed Aleph, it says the word nitma 3 times to tell you, one is that she's tummy to her husband, one is that she's tummy to the man she had a relationship with, and one that she's tummy that even for the laws of truma, that she was downgraded for that also, she lost her kedusha in that too. Now, v'meis, and what happens if her husband dies? Then cheletzes, as we continue to beis, below misabenes. Then the yavam, her brother-in-law, will do chalitza and not do yid. And the Gemara explains in the first parak why that is. But one thing our Gemara needs from this is asking, you see that the Saita is going to do chalitza. That's difficult on Rav. Rav said not only is the Saita doesn't do yibum or chalitza, but even the tzara doesn't do. So what are you telling me that the Saita is doing chalitza? Rav would tell you again, you're not understanding my halacha. Amin halacha no Saita vadai. First he was telling you, I'm talking about the rest, you're talking about the Rabbanan. Now he's saying, I was talking about a definitive Saita. The Amrit Liat Saita, something you're telling me a case of when it's a Saita out of doubt. This case is a suffix when she's secluded. And she just spent a long enough time there to make her as what we usually call Saita, which is a suffix. As the Gemara explains, the Gemara actually asks, what's the difference if we know for sure she was Mizana? You tell me, oh, okay, we consider it as an erva. Because it says, she was secluded and she became tummy, it calls her tummy. Saita suffix nami to make by a suffix Saita, it also used the terminology of tummy regarding her and should also be an erva to exempt. Why is there chalitza? The time I learned the Braisa. Keep her aim b'shum rebelazar. So the machzeh gerushasei. This is opening up a whole new case simply because we have machlekes how to interpret a pasuk. The Rebbe Lazar says if someone takes back the woman that he divorced, min hanisuin, meaning she was already married to another man, and that other husband died or divorced her. So the first husband says, you know what, we really had a good time back there in those days, let's get remarried. And he remarries her. Asura, she's forbidden to the first husband because it's the halacha of machzir gurushas, which the Torah says you're not allowed to remarry if she had married someone else in between. But in the erisin, if let's say she was only engaged to a second husband and that husband died, mutara, she's permitted to go back to the first husband. Why? The pasuk says in Devarim. Pasuk there, the beginning of the pasuk says that the first husband cannot, after he sent her away, he cannot go back and take her back to be a wife for him. After that, she already became tamei, which that wording is, tamei is that she had already cohabitation, which tells us, Rebbe Lazar says, that only if she had been married, which marriage always connotes that they were intimate, only after that, because by kedushin there's no intimacy, that only then is it forbidden machzir gurushasei. But if she was only engaged, then she's permitted to go back to her first husband. That's what Rebbe Lazar says. They say no. Whether if she was married to the second husband, or even if she was engaged, she is forbidden to the first husband. Because as Rashi says, the pasuk says v'hoiselish acher. It says that the word hahoisa is the word what's called havaya. The word havaya always connotes kedushin. It's a relationship, and it says la yuchal ba'ala rishon asher sholcha, that the first husband who sent her away cannot take her back. So you see, it doesn't have to be hutam, it doesn't have to be cohabitation. It's enough for just v'hoisa havaya if there was a kedushin. So then the question according to Chacham is, so what does Acher Tamah come to tell us? If we're holding that the halacha machzir gurushasei is even if she just got engaged to another man, so what does Hutamah come to teach us? It's actually coming to include something very different. So Rabbi is coming to include Saita Shenistara, coming to include the Isser of a wife who was a suffix where she secluded herself with another man. That's what the pasuk is alluding to, that you can't take her back because she was Hutamah. She was defiled. But again, we don't know definitively. It's that she's just secluded herself. So you see from here, what do we see from here? Well, okay, first there's a machlekes. It's just a little bit complicated sometimes. We see machlekes. Oh, thank you. Thanks. We see machlekes, how to translate this pasuk. It's just important because it's going to go into how we cheshbon the Gemara. the pasuk here, the simple translation of the pasuk is going on Machzir Gurashase. And that's how Rabbi Lazar explains it. And therefore use Acher Asher Tamar to qualify that the Issa Machzir Gurashase is only if she had Bia with the second husband. But if only engaged, it wouldn't be a problem. Chum say no. It's even just with Kedushin. Because that we learn out from Vahitzel Acher. So the problem is, okay, what are the words Acher Asher Tamar come to tell us? It does a different halacha. What is Hotamah coming to refer to? If, let's say, his wife was secluded with another man, now we don't need it to teach regarding an actual site that she was Mizana, because now we have a different pasuk, Nisra Nitma. So what's this pasuk going to teach us? Coming to teach us a site that was secluded. Ooh. So it is secluded. Also, you tell me is alluded to in the pasuk of Hutama? So then, you told me an answer. That why does that halacha that we said of the Mishnah Masech site that it says that if a woman was secluded, she's forbidden to her husband, and if the husband dies, the Yavim does chalitza, not Yibum, because it's only suffix site and not site Davadai. Who cares? You're telling me a site Davadai, the reason why she exempts that is because the Torah used the word Tameh. Ooh, Tameh is the same word we say about Erva. Suffix site, according to the Chachamim, also is alluded to in the same words of Hutama, even though it's a suffix. So you should also exempt the Erva and the Tzara. Why are you doing chalitza on that woman? So as the Gemara, no, my nistida, what does the Brisa mean when it says that she was secluded? Actually, it means nivala. It's actually a site davada. It means that if she actually had cohabitation, we know for sure. So yeah, that's we know that there's tumah by such a woman. But my karla nistida, so why are we calling it nistida, secluded? It's not just secluded. It's not, that would be a suffix. You're saying we know that she was mazana. It's just an appropriate, more refined type of terminology. Wait a second, nivala? If she was nivala, well, tumah behedik seba. We know this already. It says explicitly there in history of the she was secluded and she became tumah. So why would I need this pasuk? This pasuk is negative prohibition of marrying her, because that's what the pasuk they were saying. You can't take her back. Although we know that she's called tameh when she was mizana, but nowhere in the Torah did it say you cannot take her back. Here it's saying you cannot take her back. So therefore that answers that question. But then the Gemara says, obviously Rabbi Yisrael Keeper, who he explains the whole pasuk b'machzik Yerushalayim. If you recall, he was the first time in the Brisa we just mentioned. He said that what's the word again? That wording is going on the machzik Yerushalayim. So there's no site shenisted over here in the pasuk. It's all referring to machzik Yerushalayim. And we're just saying that the Isra is only if she had Bia, if she had been married to the second husband. So Lav Besaita, obviously, a negative prohibition for a woman who was Mazana when she was married, obviously Leslie. Obviously doesn't hold there's even a negative prohibition on Phil Zanai Nami, even if she was Mazana. My time, what's the reason? Because Avai V'ish's Ksibba. By this woman who was forbidden to her husband, it says Havaya, it says V'hoislish Acher, which means to say that there was Ishas. Like it says, if the later husband passed away, the first one cannot remarry her. Which means that she was married through Kedushin and Ishas. For example, let's say the first husband divorced her. That's where the first one is La Yuchel. But if she's Mizana, so then there's no Havai to anyone else. She's still married to the first husband. So therefore, obviously the pasuk is only referring to Machzik Yerushalayim and not Saita Shenistida, or even Saita Shemizana. And if she's Mizana, which there's no Ishas to another man, then you're right, there's no lav, according to Rabbi Yisrael Keeper, for a husband to stay married to his wife who was Mizana. So if a woman had adulterous affair, according to him, there's no lav in the Torah for him to stay married to her. Now, related discussion, so the Machzik Yerushalayim Mishanisis. Let's say someone did this Isser. His wife that he divorced had been married to someone else, and he remarries her, or Mason he passed away. So that's what's the halacha? Is there yibum for the tzara? So what's the question? So the Gemara explains actually two versions of this question, very technical. I'll leave Rabbi Yisrael Keeper like to by there's no question according to Rabbi Yisrael Keeper. Why? Keeping Rabbi Yisrael Keeper, since he says tumah, when the pasuk said tumah, what was that talking about? The Machzik Yerushalayim d'chsiva. It was talking about Machzik Yerushalayim and and we learn out tama from arayis. So we're saying tzara. No, so we're saying so. Yeah. So magdush the tzara kamaisa. So they're saying the tzara is like it, which is which by machzik rushasai, we learn out that it says tuma by machzik rushasai. So the tzara is going to be like it, which is just like by an erev it's going to exempt its tzara. So too, machzik rushasai, which the pasuk of tuma is referring to machzik rushasai, is going to have the same halacha. Right? Meaning it's a little bit technical because when the pasuk says acher shatama in that pasuk, what's it referring to? It's machlekes. Couldn't reason we keep it's referring to machzik rushasai because it was qualifying that it's only isser when she got married to the second, not engaged. It has to be that they had bia, which is what alluded to in the word tuma. So wait a second, that would mean that's just like an erva, which it says the word tuma, similar to what Rav's halacha naman alpha was regarding the site that Sarah site is because he used the same wording. Now, and if you're going to ask, but it says an exclusionary terminology. It sounds like a miyut. It says she's a te'eva, which is the machzik roshasa. It sounds like she and not her co-wife. That's not difficult. You can find that miyut going on her children. You can say he te'eva vein b'nei te'eva. You can say she's an abomination, but her children are not abomination, meaning her daughter would not be possible to kahuna. Maybe that's what's coming to mind. But her tzarasa te'eva, maybe the co-wife would be a te'eva, and therefore it would be patur from Eva. So according to Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, there's no question that we would say that tzara would be patur. Ki tibayla, the whole question of the tzara of the machzik rushasai would be a libid rabban according to rabban. What's the question? Avgav the rabban, even though the rabban say tuma b'saytu dichsev, they translate that when it says in the pasuk acher shatama, it's not going machzik rushasai, although it's there in the pasuk machzik rushasai, because they hold it's from v'haisel l'shacher. They hold at the isser machzik rushasai even when you're just engaged to another man. You don't have to have marriage. You don't have to have hutamo. You don't have to have bia. So they explain it's going on something else, going on saita shenistura. So on the one hand, you would say that you're right. Although it doesn't say tuma, but emikri from the pshute. But Maisa, the simple translation of pasuk that it is going in the machzik rushasi, and therefore in the pasuk machzik rushasi it's referring to as tuma, and therefore you would say that it would have a halacha like an erev and that would exempt it tzar. Or maybe you say no, keeping the akiyarka. It says Maisa uprooting it from the simple understanding of the pasuk. It's not going machzik rushasi. Therefore, machzik rushasai would not have a din of an erva because tuma is not going on it. That's one version of the question. Ikadamri, another version of the question, the other way around. I leave it Rabban like to Balav. No, according to Rabban, there's no question. Why? Given this akar. Of course, the tzar of machzik rushasai is not going to be patur from yibum because machzik rushasai is not an erva. It says in the pasuk of machzik rushasai, the word of tuma. That's not going machzik rushasai. That's going on saita, as we explained previously. So, the question would only be according to Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. What's the question? Although he says, that what do you mean? It says Tuma b'machzik rushasai. Yeah, but mir rachmana, but maybe you'll say the Torah has a mir because it says he to'eva. She's an abomination and tells you ve'in saras teva, but the co-wife would not be an abomination and would not be exempted because it's excluded from this mir. Maybe no, he to'eva ve'in b'nei teva. Maybe we're only saying that the woman who is machzik rushasai, she's an abomination, but her children are not an abomination. Maybe the co-wife is an abomination. Therefore, we have two versions of this question: is it going in the rabbanon or is it going in Rizv and Keeper? Be that as it may, Omaleh, he answered the question. He says, "Tinisur." We learned this in the Mishnah later on, Daf Memdal and Al. The Mishnah is talking about if it fell in front of a person, two Yevamos from one brother, meaning two co-wives. So the halacha is the bia or the chalitza of one of them exempts the tzar. What if what if one of them was kosher? We'll explain in a moment what that means kosher. And one was invalid. So it says the Mishnah, if he's going to do chalitza, so do chalitza to the invalid one. If Miyam is going to do yibam, then do yibam to the kosher one. Says the Gemara, he's explaining his answer to his question. That Rav Sheshes is answering Rabbi Yehuda, says, let me explain. When that Mishnah says ksher and psula, what does it mean? If ksher means ksher la'alma, meaning she's a miyucheses, she's kosher for kahuna, she has a clean bill of yichus health, and psula means psula alma, means to say that let's say she was a gerusha or a chalutza from some other husband, which would make her a psula on some level that she would be possible for kahanim. And you're going to tell me that okay, if you're doing chalitza, do it to anyone that's a chalutza already. If you're doing yibam, then do it for the kosher one. But says the Gemara that would be difficult. Since either way he's not a kohen anyway, he's Yisrael. So for him, either woman is okay. So my nafkil may know what would be the difference. Whichever one he wants to do, let him do chalitza. Whichever one wants to do yibum, let him do yibum too. Why would it make a difference to say that the kosher should do yibum and the psula should do chalitza? Elav, rather obviously, this is what he's sparring, what's called inferring, that he's coming to a conclusion. Kshera, when it says there's a kosher one, it means ksher le, means the one that's kosher for him. Psula means psula, the one that's puzzle for him. And really she's kosher for everyone, for the whole world. Umayniu, so who's the one that's puzzle to him? Is Mavzik Roshasa, is the one that he remarried his divorcee. Meaning, for example, if let's say his brother, the one who passed away without any children, had remarried the woman he divorced, and he had another wife, and he dies, the Grusha is puzzled to the Yavam. Why? Because he's not fit for his brother. Because the Mavzik Roshasa is an erva, because it says Acher Ashahutama. Now, Uktani we learned, B'may Miyam, he's going to do Yibum, Miyam L'Ksheira. He should do it to the kosher one. Which we're teaching you, that even though it says Tama, by the Machas L'Gura Shasai, the tzara is going to be kosher. Why is the tzara going to be kosher? Obviously because it says Hita Eva, and the tzara is not a Te'eva. Because Rashi points out, if you would think to say that when we're saying Psula, doesn't mean Machas L'Gura Shasai, it means one of the other Chival Avin, like Amal L'Kain Gadol, or Grush L'Kain Hedjid, so what would that be teaching us? We know that they're forbidden to do Yibum too. So obviously it would be teaching a unique case of Gerusha, of Machzik Gerushasai. We're saying that, okay, that you're going to have to do Chalitza to that Pasal one, to the Gerusha, to the Machzik Gerushasai. But if you can do Yibum, do it to the Kasha one. Kasha one, that's the Tzara. The Tzara, how could you do Yibum? Or you tell me that you could do Yibum to the Tzara of the Machzik Gerushasai. So that answers that question. Whichever version that was, whether it could be keep or Jabban, but we had a question. We wanted to know, is the tzara of Mavzik Gushasai can be pater or not? We're going to say no, we're not saying pater. Which according to that version that it's Hibanel, is that it's a hita, but it's only her and not her tzara. So Gemara says, no, it's not a rai. Lo'ilam, I can tell you, you're misinterpreting this whole case of this Mishnah and Daf Memdal. Ksher doesn't mean to him, it means Ksher la'alma. She's kosher to everyone, meaning to the even Kahanim. Psula means Psula Amma, that she's invalid to Kahanim. She's not great. She can't marry everyone because she's already Grusha or a Ba'ula, whatever it is. But the comment this that you're saying, but why would that make a difference? Even though the Chazi, you tell me since it's fit for him, what does it make a difference from him? He's Yisrael. So he can do Yibum Chalitza whichever he wants to. No, very important moral principle. Mishum Rabbi Yosef. So Rabbi Yosef says, Kan Shana Rebbe. Here is where Rebbe taught in this Mishnah, that it tells us that if his new chalitza should be to the apostle one, a person should not spill out the water from his cistern, from his pit, even though he doesn't need it anymore. But others need it. One man's garbage is another man's gold. This was before the days of Amazon and eBay. You still should not spill it out, like over here. Since you're doing chalitza anyway, you're not marrying this woman, you're sending her away. So do it to the apostle one. And let the kosher one go, and don't do chalitza to the kosher one, because you can do chalutza, and she's going to puzzle to kahuna. So that's the principle. And that teaching Rabbi Yosef on Daf Memdal is going on this Mishnah of that we're discussing, and therefore there's no raya, because not talking about puzzle loy, which would be mafzik Roshasa. Not talking about mafzik Roshasa, talking about a regular woman that is puzzle alma, she's puzzle kahuna. That's who you do chalitza to, so that you shouldn't ruin it for other people. So let's try to bring another right from the following Bryce. The Bryce says, if someone remarries the woman he divorced, who's already married to someone else, which we said according to everyone, that's definitely the Isser. So he b'tzarasa. So when he dies without any children, her and her co-wife do chalitza. So the Gemara says, he b'tzarasa like a daitach? You really think why would you do chalitza to both? That doesn't make sense. Elim rather says the Gemara, no, you have to amend the Bryce to tell you, either her or her tzara. Okay, but one thing we see is that the tzara, if you're going to do something with her, you're only going to do chalitza. You're not going to do yibum. Aha! That answers our question that we see that you now do yibum to the tzara. We said maybe you could do yibum to the tzara because there's no such halacha of the tzara machzik Roshasa. It's not an erva. So the Gemara says, no, it's not true. It's not right because the lav terutza k'matatzala. Didn't you already have to amend the brisa because it wasn't the correct wording? So taratzachi, you could answer then that you could amend it a different way. He cheletzes. No, the mafzik Roshasa, which obviously is forbidden at least on some level, you'll do chalitza too because she's forbidden to her husband. So tzarasa, oichel, that's some bemis. You could amend it to say that either chalitza or yibum, you cannot resolve it. Maybe you could even do yibum to the tsar of the machzik gurushasi. Similarly, Amar Rabbi Barabba says, Rabbi Yechon had the following question: machzik gurushasi mishanisses. Same case. Someone remarried a woman he divorced when she was already married to someone else. So that's somehow, what's halacha? Can you do yibum to the kohen? Someone like Rabbi says, forget about the tzar. Why don't you ask the question on the machzik gurushasi herself? Maybe you could do yibum. Then he says, no, he gufa like that. I never had a question regarding the machzik gurushasi herself. Say if for the man that she's generally permitted to, meaning her husband who died, asur, she's forbidden when she had married a second man, and when her first husband remarried her, that was an isser, and then subsequently he died. So the man that she was always forbidden to, her brother-in-law, the Yavam, like Koshkin, isn't all the more so for sure she cannot do yibum. That I never had a question. Keep in mind, my question is only what's the kohen? And what's my question? Is this kabochema that we just said that to the one that she's permitted to, she's forbidden, that meaning the machzik gurushasi, would that be strong enough to make her like almost like an erva l'mitchitzar to push away her tzar at least from yibum, or not? That's one version of the question. He taught the version differently. That had the question as follows: if someone takes back the woman he divorced after she had been married to someone else, what's halacha to the grusha herself, to the machzik gurushasi? Rabbi says, why asking on the machzik gurushasi? It's love to us. Maybe ask on the co-wife if you could even do even there. No, I said and this is the inverse of the first version. So I never had a question regarding the co-wife. The loyal kabochema the kabochema of the isra of the machzik gurushasi does not make her into like an erva to push away her tzara from doing yibum. Of course, the tzara you could do yibum. My question was only the machzik gurushasi herself. What's the halal? What's the question? Do we say miyom kabochema is the kabochema that we said that she's forbidden to the one that she's permitted to? Do we say that even b'makom mitzvah? Meaning, yes, not b'makom mitzvah. We would say if who she's generally permitted to, she's forbidden. For sure, the one that she's generally forbidden to, she's forbidden. But here it's not just stam. Here we're saying b'makom mitzvah. There's a mitzvah of yibum over here. Would we still say it? Or maybe we wouldn't say it because the mitzvah yibum would tell us that she might say he would do yibum with the machzik gurushasi because she's not an erva and she's not forbidden to the brother-in-law. It's not his gurushasi. So you continue to be in Beis Aleph, Amalei. So Rabbi says to him, and this is really a repetition, like about the discussion we had previously. We learned this in the Mishnah, Daf Dalam and Aleph, which, as Rashi explains, the way Rashi explains at least, is that it's going back on both versions to answer either one of those versions. We learned in the Mishnah that says, we said this already, and we're saying this again for this discussion. If one of them was kosher, then one was pasul to him. We said, to do chalitza to the one that's pasul, then miyam l'ksher you do the even to the kosher. Says the Gemara, my ksher, my psul. What does it mean kosher? What does it mean pasul? Ilim ksher ksher l'ama. If you think ksher means that she's kosher for kahanim, and psula means pasul for the kahanim, and therefore when you're doing chalitza, do it to the chalutza, and if you're doing yibum, then do it to the ksher. But why? Why would you say that? Given the dechazir, since either one is fit for him to do either yibum or chalitza, my nafkal no. What's the difference? Why would I make the criterion chalitza to the psula and yibum to the ksher? Elav, obviously ksher lay. The kosher one means kosher to him. Psula means pasul to him. Remind you, what's that case? Machzik gurushasi. It means the one who remarried the woman that he divorced. That's the one that's pasul to him. Ketani we learned in Hoymiyam, we said, and if he's doing yibum, miyam like ksher does yibum to the kosher one, which is to the tzara. So Rashi points out that obviously you see, which is answering really both versions of the questions. If you recall, we had two versions of the question. Either Rabbi Yechon's question was on the machzik gurushasi herself, or was on the tzara. And according to either version, he said the other one's not a question to me. Either way, what Rabbi is saying, you see from the Mishnah of Memdalad, that the machzik gurushasi herself is forbidden to do yibum. You have to do chalitza to her, and the tzara is permitted because it's telling you do yibum to the ksher. So again, it's the same diukim we had, but it's a different discussion. But basically, you see, you answer both questions. You see what the halacha with her, and you see the halacha with her tzara. So the Gemara rejects it, as we said, as the previous Gemara discussion. No, you have the wrong case. Ksher doesn't mean to him and pasul to him. It means la'alma, psula alma. The comment is that you said, given the chazir, since it's fit for him, might have to know what's the difference. The Rabbi Yosef is contrary. Rabbi is teaching a very socially moral principle Why would you go out and do chalitza to the kshera? Now, one less woman that a kohen can marry due to the chalutza, because women, the kind need those women that are still kosher. There is no raya. It's not talking about kshera loy and psula loy. One less raya, toshima. If someone takes back the woman that he divorced after she got married, the Brisa says, and we already quoted this also, she and her co-wife, you do chalitza to. Says why would you do chalitza twice? And they would rather say, either her or tzara. So what do you see from here? You see al kapanim that both of them are forbidden to do yibum. Again, whichever version of the question you had was the question on the Mazik Roshas herself, was it on the tzara? Either way, you see you're going to do chalitza to either one. So that answers both questions. You see both are forbidden to do yibum to. So you want to know, aren't you anyways amending the Brisa? You could further amend it and say, Hichaylat says, yes, you're right. You can answer part of the question that regarding the Mazik Roshas herself, you have to do chalitza to, but Tzara, I can tell you, and you have not resolved at least that version of the question, what's halachic status with the Tzara? Could be the Tzara of the Mazik Roshas, you would still do Yibum for, and therefore that's not resolved. Thank you to any time for hosting us.